Hi, I'm Adam Porter and this is my board gaming vlog, and last week I got back from Essen Spiel 2017, the biggest convention in the world, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the games that I saw and what I got up to at that convention. Now, if you've watched my channel before, you'll know that I don't tend to go for the same games as a lot of the other channels do. That's not really a deliberate thing, it's just that my tastes seem to be a little bit offbeat compared to some of the other reviewers. They like bigger, more strategy type games, I like smaller family type games. So there are a few of the sort of bigger releases that maybe I wouldn't have picked up myself, and I'll tell you some of the reasons why. In fact, you can see my sort of haul from Essen around me, the games facing out front. These are the ones that I picked up, and some of them you may not recognise because they weren't that talked about at the convention. So let's go through some of the big titles that I considered. If I had all the money and storage and everything else in the world, then I would have got these games. Azul looks absolutely beautiful as an abstract game, I mean, when I'm looking for games, I'm looking for something very beautiful or I'm looking for something very new. So a lot of really excellent, solid games don't make it into my collection just because they don't fulfill one of those criteria. That applies to things like Nussfjord and Riverboats and Otis and all manner of these sort of games that I'm absolutely certain are excellent games because I know the companies and I know their previous games very, very well. Equally, it applies to some of the big releases that were party games. I mean, When I Dream looks very beautiful and Muse looks very beautiful. I'm not sure I'm going to get a hugely different experience to some of the other games that I've played over the last few years. So for now, they're on the to buy one day sort of pile rather than the buy them immediately now. Something like Charterstone. I was really impressed by Charterstone because I've enjoyed James Stegmaier's games in the past. I really liked Viticulture. I thought it was a really fun, interesting game, but it looks so serious. Same thing goes for Scythe. I've never played Scythe. It just looks so serious. I like something with a bit of a lighter touch, personally. So there's a lot of these things that didn't quite make the cut. Things that look a bit sillier, a bit lighter. Bunny Kingdom looks great. Kitchen Rush looks great. But they didn't quite make it into my suitcase. So let's have a talk about the things that did. Well, firstly, let me show you Untold Adventures Await. In Untold Adventures Await, players work together to tell a story in a 5-act structure, inspired by rolling story cubes. These are dice with icons which can be interpreted however you wish. Players begin by answering a few questions about their chosen setting and writing some notes. They need to decide things like, is this past, present or future? Where does the story take place and what is the tone? Is it comedy, fantasy or high drama? A tile is flipped to represent a dangerous dilemma. Players select story cubes to place onto the tile, inspiring a location and a threat. The tile dictates whether the threat is attacking, or capturing, or pursuing, or accusing someone or something. Players now create their characters. Again, they're filling out a short sheet and they're answering some questions. They re-roll and use the cubes to inspire them in this. The board indicates that players can now collectively ask 4 questions about the scene and take 4 actions. If they ask a question, they take a question token, they re-roll the cubes and they use them to answer the question. If a player takes an action, they take an action token and they declare what they're trying to achieve. They then turn over a card to indicate yes, a success, no, a failure, yes and, which is an incredible success, yes but, which is success but with a price, no and, which is disastrous failure, or no but, which is unsuccessful but with an upside. They may also be required to turn over a reaction card which shows the emotional impact on any one character of their choice. And once all actions and question tokens have been taken, players turn over the next tile called the Plot Thickens. The cubes are placed to represent an evil ally or an evil master or a terrible secret or a dark agenda, and the tiles indicate whether this is linked to the previous threat or to the previous person or thing that was under threat. Players now ask questions and they take tokens, and then they move on to Act 3, which is called an unheroic undertaking, Act 4, which is the truth revealed, and then finally they wrap the story up in Act 5, the final showdown. Each time they're selecting cubes, they're asking questions, and they're taking actions. Throughout the game, each player can play tokens from their own supply to add an idea to another player's suggestion, or to modify a roll of a cube, or to describe a flashback in time. They can also flip their play pause card to force a timeout where all players discuss the direction of the story and whether they feel engaged with it. When the story is complete, players write some notes and decide whether this is a one-off adventure or whether the characters and settings they've created will become part of a bigger campaign. I was blown away by this game. When I played this game, it's incredible. It's a few years ago I used to harp on about a game called, I'll grab it here, called Winter Tales. This was released by Fantasy Flight after an initial sort of small print run Italian release. Very, very beautiful game, storytelling game about a sort of twisted fairy tale world. Quite hard to make it work though. It takes quite a lot on the part of the players to kind of ensure that they collaborate. Untold, that sorts it for you, really. It's got all sorts of mechanisms in there. That brilliant thing where you can spend tokens to add ideas to other people's suggestions, which means that you've only got 2 of those. So if you're trying to add ideas all the time, it becomes obvious. And if a player hasn't really had any input, that's clear there on the table. You can see they haven't spent any tokens. So let's give them a chance. The opportunity to flip my card over and say, right, hold up, time out. You know, I want to talk about this, it's not quite working for me, and explaining why. Brilliant. I mean, all sorts of things in there to control alpha players, people who just want to take over. Some excellent storytelling mechanisms in there. I'll probably make another video about Untold because I was so inspired by it, really. But the idea that the dice are colour-coded when you place them onto the tiles, and so when you turn over a new tile, it'll have a slot for a dice, but it'll have a coloured border around it, and this means you can either use a new dice, or you can reincorporate a dice from a previous scene that was in a similarly coloured space. I mean, the fact that there's only 9 dice and they'll be on a common theme means that the story stays tight because the same sort of images come up time and again. It doesn't go off into this meandering sort of mess of a story. It stays tight, it stays relevant, things get reincorporated. It's a tight, beautiful structure, really gives you opportunity to look at all different types of stories as well. In fact, this is how inspired I was. I got this parcel in the post this morning, so here's me opening it up, and this is pretty much the entire set of Rory's Story Cubes that are available at this point. I didn't buy some of the themed sets like the Moomins one, or the Doctor Who set, or the Adventure Time set. I went for Looney Tunes and Scooby-Doo because I know those worlds a little bit better than the other worlds that the other sets had, but I'm really looking forward to exploring all these different dice, and what a beautiful component to use in a board game. So I'm hoping it inspires some of my future designs as well. Talking of designs, of course, I had 2 of my own games out at the fair. I had Doodle Rush up here, this is one of my designs, and also Big Bazaar. I've shown those in different videos, so you can go and watch those if you're interested in those games. Other games that I picked up. Divinity Derby. So one of my favourite games is Hab und Gut. It's a stock market, sort of stocks and shares game, buying and selling stocks, by Carlo A. Rossi. That's been out of print for years, only ever had a German release, but it's a stellar game, and it's because it's got 2 really unique mechanisms in it. One of them's about shared information, the other is about a sort of how much money are you giving to charity, you're not quite sure, and you can be eliminated from the final scoring. Divinity Derby is a sort of development of that concept. So here we have mythical creatures racing around the board, but we have a set of cards to the right of us and a set of cards to the left of us. And on our turn, we can choose a card from the right and a card from the left, but they're shared between myself and my neighbour on either side. And one of the cards that I play is going to be at full speed, the other one is going to be at a reduced speed. So I've got some control and some knowledge over how fast the creatures are going to go around the track, and then we place bets and it plays out a bit like something like Camel Up. I haven't played it yet, but I think it looks great, and if it's anything like Hab und Gut, I'm just glad to see something on that sort of system that's back in print from Ares Games. Okay, what else have we got? We've got Shuttles. And let me show you Shuttles. In Shuttles, players represent wizards, literally tipping gnomes from a cup to send them out to do important jobs around the town. The cup has 15 gnomes in it, and the player has one swift motion to tip out their desired number of gnomes. The number of gnomes tipped out determines where on the board you can visit. Many of the locations are valuable. You place a good onto a building and then you sell it the next time you roll that same numbered location. In the meantime, the goods increase in value whenever another player places a good on that same space. But if you wait too long, the good is discarded with no return at all. Some spaces force you to give money to other players or collect money from other players. Some force you to place money onto the board, and another location allows you to collect all the money that's been built up on the board. Once all the storage spots for sold goods is filled up, then the game ends and the player with the most money wins. Now, if you've watched this channel before, you'll know that I love Zoc Verlag games, and it's not because they're all brilliant games. Shuttles has all sorts of problems. But the great thing is nobody else would ever publish this, and yet Zoc will do it. What a great randomizer that is, throwing those things out of the cup. There's a little bit of skill there, but really you don't have that much control. And that is the big problem in the game, is that you're jumping about all over the board and you're trying to get one thing which is really, really good thing, but actually you end up getting something that's a really, really terrible thing. And that's the thing that's hugely funny about the game, but also means that the game is extremely swingy. You know, you can win or lose the game based on a single turn, a single toss of those gnomes across the board. Particularly towards the end of the game, some of those spaces are so valuable and some of them are so terrible that that final toss of the gnomes will end the game for you, potentially. But it is also hilarious. You know, if I want the best possible space on the board, I need to tip out 14 of those gnomes from the cup. That means leave one in the cup. But if I tip all of them out and get number 15, that's a terrible space to go to. So we have these huge swings, and I think it's most fun if you declare which space you're going for, and then you tip the dice out, and then we all the gnomes out, and then we all laugh at whether you managed to achieve it or not. I mean, it's nonsense, the whole thing, but what a great sort of experiment in a randomizer for a game. I loved it. I thought it was really, really funny. And Zoc had other games which look really great. I haven't got to these yet. There's a game called Café Fatal, or Fatal, which I think is not Death Cafe as I had read it as. It's Café Luck, I suppose, something along those lines. This is by Brett Gilbert and Trevor Benjamin, who are two friends of mine. Kimono is a remake of an old game, but it's a Zoc Verlag, a sort of Prisoner's Dilemma type game. Herbalism, this is a deduction game from the same people who made Hanamakoji, which was a great hit last year, so I'm taking a chance on that. Sort of competitive deduction game. Got Druids down here, which is a trick-taking game. What else is around me here? Scribble Time, that's a little drawing game. I've got Sureness Shizer. Let me show you Sureness Shizer. This is a re sort of imagining of No Thanks. It's exactly the same game as No Thanks. It's just now coming from Amigo Spiel with this sort of obscene title, Sureness Shizer, and this great artwork. So this is the cover of Sureness Shizer by Amigo Spieler, the new version of No Thanks. And I wanted to show you the cards because I think they're brilliantly illustrated. So here we have all sorts of awful things happening. This man is being rescued, but he's being rescued by the Titanic. Here there's a crocodile and he's on a treasure island. Here there's a bird pecking at his hot air balloon. He's about to fall off the cliff. A lion creeping up on him. Here, squashed by an octopus going over a cliff. Some of these are really... look at this one. The man's fishing and he's caught him on his hook. He's left some scissors inside him. His wheel's fallen off. There's a fly in his medicine. I mean, some of these are really dreadful and sort of hilarious, darkly hilarious. Look, his pants have come off in the swimming pool. A bird has ruined his ice cream, let's say, and here he's about to ruin his shoes. Here he's sat in some paint, and so on. So they're really, really funny illustrations. What I particularly like is this is the lowest numbered card in the deck, and he's dreaming about a piano falling on his head. And then the highest numbered card in the deck, number 35, there's actually a piano falling on his head. So this is No Thanks by Amigo Spieler, their style Sureness Shizer. And the other game, which I found I've been playing constantly since I got back from the convention, is this little one here, Tokyo Highway. Now, one of the big games at the convention that everyone was talking about was Meeple Circus, a stacking game. It looks so much fun, Meeple Circus. But there's some complications in that game. You have to not only stack things, you have to put them in certain, you have to put a certain thing next to another certain thing in order to score points. There's lots of different opportunities and there's a bit of drafting involved. And I mean, I think it looks great and everyone's telling me it's great. But when I look for a dexterity game, generally I look for simplicity and laughs. And Meeple Circus, another thing is the word Meeple generally turns me off if it's in the title of a game. So Meeple Circus, Mutant Meeples, Meeple War, Terran Meeple City, all these things. There's something about it that makes me cringe, that word Meeple in the title of a game. Tokyo Highway is a dexterity game, but it's got a lot of positional sort of like an abstract strategy aspect to it as well, but not heavy whatsoever, and it looks stunning when you lay it all out. Let me show you. In the two-player game Tokyo Highway, each player has a collection of roads, pillars, junctions and cars. The aim of the game is to be the first to get rid of all of your cars. On a player's turn, they place a new road. They do this by first positioning a pillar. It must have a height either one above their previous pillar or one below it. They may never touch the opponent's roads or pillars. If a player's road crosses their opponent's road, and importantly, no other roads are already crossing it, then the player can place a car onto the road. And equally, if a player places their road under an opponent's road, and no other roads are under it, then they can place a car. With really clever positioning, sometimes a player can place 2 or 3 cars in a single turn by putting their road under and over several of the opponent's roads in a single move. Junctions allow you to vary the height of your pillars without restriction, and they also allow you to branch off in different directions, but you only have 3 of these, so use them sparingly. If any roads are knocked over during construction, they're rebuilt and the careless player gives pillars to their opponent as a penalty. The game ends when one player uses their final car. In this case, they win. Or the game could also end when one player runs out of pillars. And in this case, they lose. So I've shown you a couple of reprints there. I've shown you, well, I suppose Divinity Derby isn't a reprint, but it's a reimagining of Haben Gut, and then we've got the reprint of No Thanks. But the big, really impressive reprint for me was Tikal, which is only available in the French language edition at the moment. I don't think it's coming in an English language version because Rio Grande still have the rights. Look at this version of Tikal. This is one of them, well, it is. I think it's the most stunning board game I've ever seen. This is from Super Meeple. I mean, Mexico was amazing, the lovely resin pieces, but this one with the stacking pieces, and you compare it to the old one, which was already really, really nice, the older version of Tikal, this is an amazing achievement, and I really, I cannot wait for Java next year from the same company. Also, their Mafia Zoo game looks good, which is a reimagining of Louis XIV. I'm going to hang on for an English version of that because I believe it's coming later in the year, so I didn't pick up the French version. Albeit I think it's language independent, if you're happy to sort of print off the rules from the internet. Is there anything else I need to tell you about Essen Spiel 2017? Let me have a look around here and see. We've got a few expansions. I actually picked these up shortly before the fair, but we've got the Dream Home expansion. That's very good. I've played that now. It doesn't make Dream Home heavy at all, but it just gives a little bit more gamery sort of set collection and objectives to the game. We've got the Merry Men expansion for Sheriff of Nottingham, which I think, I mean, I haven't played it, but it seems to fix some of the issues that I had about the fact that if you always told the truth in Sheriff of Nottingham, you could often win the game just by really not engaging with the core mechanic of the game, which is lying. And I think that's a problem with the game, but Merry Men fixes that because it hugely incentivizes lying to the sheriff. There's an expansion here for Isle of Skye. I love Isle of Skye. Isle of Skye Journeyman. Now this one really does make the game a lot heavier. Haven't played it, but I've read the rules, and there's a lot to be thinking about on your turns. It's become a main event sort of game, you know, like a medium weight Euro rather than that sort of light medium thing that it was before. So I'm looking forward to trying that one out as well. Other recent games I've picked up, London, that was very good, a remake of the old Martin Wallace game. I'm sure there are others. Oh, the new, I played the new Catacombs and Castles game from Catacombs. Nice reimagining of Catacombs. I don't know that adds a huge amount over the original game because it's still got some complexity to it. But it is shorter and it's sort of team-based. So it's a nice variant on Catacombs. So anyway, thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you found it interesting. I didn't mention the other thing that I was doing at Essen Spiel, which was meeting publishers. I met many publishers, and it was fantastic. Probably met 22 different publishers from all around the world and showing them different games. So hopefully I'll have a few more things to show you over the next couple of years. I know I've certainly got at least 2 coming out next year. Yeah, so I'll see you on the next video. Maybe I'll talk a little bit more about Untold.